Well, good evening. I'm continuing on with a couple of videos while I've got the energy and got a cigar left here. This is a Mirafell, fantastic cigar from OSI Tobacco, and it's too good to put down. We're still sitting here with my standard attire tonight, Seiko Ananta chronograph, and these amazing Rios Mercedes alligator tail. Look at that tail sticking out. And Waddy's over there. He's taking a nap. He says, all right, I'll sort of open my eyes. You mentioned my name. But what I'd like to talk about tonight is a huge, important piece of my life. It's my time with the Jesuits and Jesuit spirituality. And I give you a little piece of that if you're interested. And sharing that with a cigar. So, put the camera down over here and let's talk a little bit. So, Jesuit spirituality. Who are the Jesuits? So the Jesuits are part of this sect of the Roman Catholic Church, and their charism is something along the lines of God in all things, and so you can find God in all things. You can do missionary work in all kinds of ways. One of my ways that I chose to do it is through legal aid, but a lot of Jesuits do it in many different ways. And the founder was Saint Ignatius of Loyola, and he had some real challenges in his life, and he ended up writing these spiritual exercises. And I was able to go through and do this 30-day retreat in Gloucester, Massachusetts, years ago, the spiritual exercises, which were amazing. And I highly encourage you, if you're a seeker like I am, to do a Jesuit retreat. Maybe not a 30-day, that's a little extreme, I'll grant you that, but they have like 3-day retreats, and different, you can look them up. Highly worthwhile. And it doesn't have to be a Jesuit one. I go down to the Abbey of Examen, the Trappist monks down in Kentucky. I've gone down there, and there's different ways to experience. But what I want to talk about is Jesuit spirituality. And a couple of things that I found really helpful for me. So Ignatius introduced this concept of an examen, or examining of consciousness. And I think it's a real helpful meditative practice that maybe you'll find useful. I've certainly found it useful. And maybe I've touched on it at different times. But basically, and forgive me, my other fellow Jesuits who may watch this, and I didn't study to prep for this, so I'm just winging it here. But the Examen is a really cool tool that you can do fairly quickly, but you can do it on a nightly basis if you're up to it. It is an exercise, so you got to kind of build yourself. But I encourage you to try it, and here's what it is. Basically, you look back on your day, and you say, where was it that I saw God's light today in my life? And it can be very simple, it could be in the eyes of another person, something kind they said. It could be just the beauty of your dog, and walking the dog and seeing the gentleness in them. It could be nature in the trees and going outside and basking in a little bit of fresh air and sunshine. It could be a Mirafell cigar, just relaxing you. Where was it that maybe you saw a bit of God's light in your day? And if you look for it, I think you'll see it. And if you don't look for it, you won't, or often you won't. But I've noticed that when I go back and I look and I say, where was God in my life today? I find him. I find it in so many places, so many ways. And so that's the first step of the Examen, is look back over your day and see where that might be. And it's an exercise to start to try to recognize it. And then the second thing to do is to say, where was I maybe an impediment, or where did I block God's light today for someone else or in some situation, where I was angry, where I was mean, where I, missed an opportunity to share goodness with somebody. Where was I a block to that? And we all have those experiences. None of us are perfect. And so we have that in our day. But importantly, to recognize that and say, where was that? And then ask for gentle forgiveness for that, from whatever you believe in, God, or forgiveness from yourself. To say, I'm not perfect, but there was a chance, there was an opportunity there, and I reacted in a way that sort of blocked God's light, and I'm sorry for that, and I'm going to try to do better tomorrow. And it may be as simple as that, and maybe learn something from that. Maybe, that will spur further thought or meditation. But those are the two things, right? So look for God's light and look where you might have blocked it. And then asking for forgiveness, and then vowing to do better the next day. It's like, all right, I'm gonna try to look a little harder for God's light and see where it's at. I'm gonna try to be less blocking of that. So that's, in essence, the Examen. There's more to it. You can read up on it, but that's what my piece of it is. And I think that's a real powerful way to look back on your day, especially acknowledging where God was. So the Jesuits taught me that. The Jesuits taught me to look for God in all things, and they also are firm believers in social justice, and that's a whole nother topic on its own. But the idea that we are social beings, we are, and that we ought to strive for more justice in this world. We have Steve made a coffee cup, one of our logos, and something along the lines of, I bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice. Right? I think it might have been a quote from Martin Luther King, and that's what we ought to look to do, is just have some sense of justice. Jesus preached that for sure. So the Jesuits kind of ingrained that in me, and I really appreciate that. And the other thing they did is they freed me from the bondage of the Catholic Church. It seems like an irony there, right? Because they're part of the Catholic Church. But, and one of the ways they did that, it was all about the spirituality, and sort of fundamentalist Catholics will, find this to be a heresy. But we had some guys in our class, the novitiate, that were studying to become priests. And some of them didn't go to Mass. They didn't even go to Mass on Sunday. Now, we're supposed to go to Mass every day, but these guys, they missed daily and they missed Sunday. And so some of us newer guys, we talked to our spiritual guys, say, hey, what about such and such, how is it he gets away with, he didn't go to Mass on Sunday. For a Catholic, growing up, this was this idea of mortal sin, and this is kind of the idea of breaking me of this bondage. And the priest said he acknowledged that, and he talked to the one or two guys that were that, and he said he was okay with it because they were open about it. And at that point, they weren't getting anything spiritually from the Mass, and the priest said that's fine. They're having discussions about it. They're connecting with God, and obviously, if they want to continue on the path to become a priest, at some point they probably are going to have to be open to attending Mass, because they're going to have to do it. But But at that point, they said it's okay because, that's where they were at. And so this idea of being gentle on yourself spiritually and where God is calling you, and that just kind of broke a lot of those chains of that rigid Catholicism, that we could not be bound by all these rules. And, it's not about the rules, it's about the connection. It's where it takes you. Those are framework. And so that was insightful, and then the whole idea of, like I mentioned maybe in another video, this ministry of presence. Just going out and spending time with people and, sharing your time. Those are things the Jesuits kind of taught me. And I'm grateful for that. They've got a great spiritual charism. I love Father James Martin. He's got some podcasts. He's a great Jesuit. Of course, Pope Francis. Happy we've got a Jesuit Pope. So a lot of good stuff there. And then, it's not limited to them. I'm a big fan of Richard Rohr. Some of you may have read some of his stuff and the idea of the universal Christ, right? I wouldn't have been open to that probably without my time in the Jesuits, and so Jesuits have been very freeing for me, a great spiritual foundation. Being able to do the spiritual exercises were so profound, and then little tools like the Examen are really helpful. So I remember being out in Gloucester and smoking a cigar, and one of the other priests kind of looked at me a little funny as he walked by, and like, smoking a cigar. I said, just having a cigar with Jesus. And he didn't have a good comeback. So anyway, enjoy your cigar with your friends, with me, with Jesus, with Buddha, whoever you want, but connect spiritually. And we'll see you soon. Good night, all.